This is the Invincible podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Invincible Season 2, Episode 2. In about 6 hours, I lose my virginity to a fish.
It's the Lizard League, sir.
You called me back for the Lizard League?
They've hit a bio-research lab outside of Dallas.
How? We got King Lizard rotting in a prison cell.
It appears that Supreme Lizard has seized control in his absence.
Send in the Guardians.
Are you sure they're ready?
If they can't take down the Lizard League, they'll never be ready.
Welcome back, fellow Guardians, to the Invincible podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We are on to Episode 2 of Season 2 of Invincible. In the best named episode so far, in about 6 hours, I lose my virginity to a fish. I am one of your hosts, Derek, and we have a very special guest for this podcast. John is joining me for this podcast. I know you said you wanted to maybe hop in for an episode of Invincible, but I don't think you thought you were going to be a replacement for Chris, and a last minute one at that.
No, I didn't. But welcome, and hello, fellow Guardians. Yes, a new voice. A voice that knows nothing about Invincible. Although I have enjoyed watching it, but yes. I can't say I have too many notes on this episode, but enjoying the ride of Invincible.
And you have watched every single episode.
I have, absolutely. Yeah, and a great title for the episode. Although it doesn't transpire.
It doesn't, but he does believe that's what's going to happen to him.
Yes.
Definitely.
He does think that is going to happen.
But for those of you who don't know John, if you haven't heard him, because you may just be listening to our Invincible podcast, John is our main podcaster who's been on the podcast for TV Podcast Industries for almost 10 years now, just over 800 episodes, John.
Yes.
At this stage.
It is.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone, fellow Guardians. It's the first time I've ever said that. So, yeah, really good to be on the show, and hopefully I can contribute something for Invincible.
Well, you are our lead podcaster, of course, as well on All the Boys podcasts and on Gen V. You're my co-host on there as well. So it's interesting to be introducing you on this podcast, because that does feel weird after this amount of time.
Yeah, no, it's a little strange how you've introduced me.
I'm going to stop doing that. But I do want to go into a little bit of news this week for Invincible, because there's lots and lots of stuff coming out as the first couple episodes of the show have just aired. So some interesting news in other realms of Invincible. First up, Invincible presents Atom Eve. The game is coming to PC on November 14th, just next week. It's kind of a visual novel with some kind of light turn-based role-playing parts of the game. It looks kind of interesting. It's like a graphic novel come to life.
Excellent.
Where you make your choices as you go through. So looks really interesting, and again focused on Atom Eve. She's had her own movie this year, the full hour-long episode of Atom Eve. So now they have a game coming out next week that you can buy for PC.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, I'm interested to try it.
Yeah. I have to say, there is also some more gaming news for the Invincible series, because Omni-Man is coming to Mortal Kombat, right up his street, with a bit of punching,
absolutely,
spine ripping, head, decapitating, you name it. Yes, he's coming to Mortal Kombat on November the 9th, where he will feature some of the massive moves from the TV series and the comic as well. Yeah. So yeah, really interesting stuff. I did like the one where he holds the opponent to the oncoming underground train.
Yes,
sure.
Just like he did to Mark in season 1 in Chicago. So quite cool to see that brought to life. It is definitely taking references from the cartoon series, exactly as you've seen the performance there of Omni-Man last season. And it is also voiced by J.K. Simmons, so you'll hear J.K.
really
Simmons' voice there.
Yeah, and of course, with the end of the little snippet about Omni-Man, we do have another character coming into Mortal Kombat as well, for one of the characters we've covered on our The Boys podcast with Homelander.
That's right.
So yes, that will be depraved, I guess.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to getting these two characters and seeing Omni-Man versus Homelander in a video game. That's going to be so cool.
Interesting.
I've always been a fan of Mortal Kombat. I've always picked up the games. Don't normally pick them up on day of release because there's so much extra content. I eventually just get it marked down with everything involved in it, everything included in it. So really looking forward to playing that in a couple of months' time, probably for me. But check it out. Coming out, available on PlayStation and Xbox on the 9th of November for Omni-Man.
It certainly is. Also coming out weekly will be our Invincible podcasts as well for at least this week and the next 2 weeks for the first 4 episodes that are released.
Yeah.
So you can pop on over, fellow Guardians, to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe to any flying or grounded superhero podcast player of your choice. Of course, we do love to get your thoughts, theories, observations, and comments on all things to do with Invincible. So please send in those by email to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or over on our Facebook group. You can join us there, where we put a spoiler post up each and every week on the Invincible episodes. Just head on over to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Absolutely. Now, as we are recording in advance, we mentioned this last week, we have our feedback for episode 1, which we'll talk about later on in this episode, and we'll talk about your feedback on episode 2. Once you send it in to us, we'll talk about that on episode 3. Great stuff. Let's get on with the discussion about Invincible Season 2, Episode 2.
Yes, Derek, who gave us this episode?
Well, the show, of course, is created by Robert Kirkman, Cory Walker, and Ryan Ottley from their comic book Invincible. The supervising director, once again, for this episode is Duncan, and this episode was written by Matt Lambert. He's previously written 9 episodes of the TV show Into the Badlands and an episode of the Netflix smash hit Wednesday.
Oh, excellent stuff. Yeah, really enjoyed Wednesday.
Yeah, there's a little dark twist to that show that I really liked.
Definitely.
Really enjoyed that. The director for this episode is Ian Abando. He's been an animator and storyboard artist on lots of animated kids movies, including Despicable Me 2 and 3, but this is his first episode of Invincible. He has also worked on 9 episodes of 2017 Spider-Man animated series. The reason I mention that is because last week the director of that episode had done 26 of the 52 episodes, I think it was, or 36 of the 52 episodes. So drawing on people who've worked on Spider-Man before, a superhero series, and moving them on to Invincible, another sort of superhero series.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I like that.
Excellent. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your first synopsis for an Invincible episode for Invincible Season 2, Episode 2? In about 6 hours, I lose my virginity to a fish.
Sure. While his classmates attend their graduation from Reginald Vell Johnson High School, Mark battles Dr. Seismic. The Doctor is atop the Washington Memorial and wants to return all of the stolen minerals to the Earth, including the memorial. Mark eventually beats him and his Magnemite henchman, but the memorial is halved in size. But all is not lost, as Mark makes it just in time to graduate with his friends. With their summer now free, Samantha takes back her mantle of Atom Eve and goes to help rebuild Chicago. She cuts through the red tape and uses her powers to rebuild an apartment block and build a new playground that the city officials had never allowed due to planning permission. Later, as Samantha visits her parents and learns that her father has lost her job, she tries to use her powers to solve their problems by creating a golden apple they can trade for money. But her angry father wouldn't accept the gift, telling her all the repairs she made in Chicago failed, until she learns that she has to have the actual knowledge, not just use her powers. Her father forbids her to return. Meanwhile, Mark is sent to Midnight City by Cecil to locate a new vigilante who has called themselves after the murdered vigilante Darkwing. He finds Darkwing's former sidekick Nightboy, angry that Omni-Man killed his former mentor. He wants Mark to pay for his father's actions. He sends Invincible to the Shadow World, but Mark threatens the new Darkwing, knocking him out and bringing him back to Cecil. But it's not over for Mark, as he also has to face the Queen of Atlantis, following his father's murder of her husband, Aquarius, as they have threatened to destroy the eastern seaboard of the USA. Traditions of the Atlanteans state that Mark has to marry the fish-like queen, but there are new traditions in place, as Invincible has to fight the monster of the deep. With a little help from Cecil, Invincible frees himself, but as he escapes, the monster begins to attack and kill the Atlanteans. Mark cannot leave them to be killed, and beats the sea creature back to the depths, releasing him from his obligation to Atlantis. Elsewhere, months after NASA astronaut Russ Livingston was replaced by a shape-shifting Martian, he is terrified he'll be found out. But after getting a leave of absence to pull himself together, the alien sees the success of Martian Man and joins the new Guardians of the Globe as a new hero, the Shapesmith. With his help, the Guardians beat the mediocre villainous team of the Lizard League, who change leadership once again. In another dimension, the Angstrom Levy captured a Mark whose father is beaten by the humans of that Earth. He learns how they won and leaves that Mark with a female Cecil and Donald to punish him for his crimes as he jumps to another dimension.
Ooh, well done, John. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, these episodes of Invincible are really, packed with a lot of stuff. I'm guessing different sort of comic issues. And so it can be quite hard to figure out what's going on if you're just jumping into it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot going on that seems, to some extent, a little disconnected if you haven't really read the comics and so on. But it is absolutely rammed with information and fun as well. So, I thought this was a really good episode. And I'm really enjoying just the animation anyway. I love season 1, and so far, this is, just the second episode, but it's got a really intriguing sort of kick-off point to it. So I'm really enjoying it.
Absolutely. And one of the things I really enjoy about Robert Kirkman's storylines is what he does is set up something and then pay it off, months down the line in his comic books. This seems to be the same with Invincible. Chris is our Invincible fan who's read all the comic books, but it is definitely what he did within Walking Dead, where he'd set something up and then it would come back a couple of years later. It would suddenly pay off. So what we see here is a couple of things that have happened in this episode, which are connecting back to season 1 and will probably pay off at the end of season 2 or into season 3. But they're here because it's building to something. It's always elements in the background that are building to things, but there is absolutely tons that are going on. The way we talk about our episodes, as usual, John, you'll be used to this. We talk about our major points or major moments from the episode that we think stood out to us. But there's always little things that are in these episodes, particularly because they're so crammed, that we may miss out on. So let's just try and make sure we cover as much as we can from the episode. And I do want to start out with our first point, the return of Dr. Seismic.
Absolutely.
What an
the
interesting
geologist
character.
Superhero.
Exactly.
Yes. I love crap superheroes, and he is by far and away just perfect for the role.
He is. Yeah. He really is. I love this new idea that he's come back with. We saw him last season. We saw him fighting on Mount Rushmore with Mark. Yeah. He destroyed quite a lot of it last season as well. This time he's returned with his new Magnemite warriors at his side, which it doesn't take long for Mark to beat. He does get, of course, the crap kicked out of him because that's what happens.
Yeah, and
Mark
the memorial, the Washington Memorial, does get fairly sort of messed up, really.
It certainly does, but the idea that's inside Dr. Seismic's head, that he's going to return every mineral the humans have taken from the planet Earth back to the planet, including everybody's house and everybody's shop and every building that's out there, starting here with the Washington Memorial. It's just ridiculous, but very funny.
It's so awful.
Yeah, you can keep the houses made of wood. I love that
exactly.
as well.
It's so kind of stupidly good. It's like it's kind of the eco warrior gone mental. I'm returning it to the earth. All this stone that's been used. Like it's almost, why do you exist? But why not as well? Like it is so good. I love the fact as well, Dr. Seismic, but he's not a professor. Yeah. Or, all that kind of element to it.
Because he hasn't taught, so he's not a professor.
No, exactly. It's just so good. And I like the fact that this is keeping Mark from his graduation ceremony. So, you're kind of flitting back to the graduation ceremony where you've got Samantha, Amber and William and, just wondering where he is. And I just kind of like this, the reason for him not being there is because he's had to fight, just kind of the crappiest supervillain ever with kind of an agenda that Mark's probably not too fussed about, other than that he's destroying central Washington in the process. I just kind of it's almost like he shouldn't bother. But it's going back to the fact that, he wants to help. He wants to, in a sense, that inner guilt for what happened with Omni-Man, and Cecil, is still dubious about whether they can control him if he went rogue again. So I guess is giving him a few more sort of low level, not that important missions, which hence the return of Dr. Seismic and his kind of pointless plan, really.
Yeah. He's never going to succeed with that one at all, is he? But you're right. There is that kind of part of it with Cecil where we find it a little bit later on when he's confronted by Mark's mom, Debbie, about Mark being back on the front lines, that she doesn't want her son hurt, of course. You know, he's not ready for this yet. He's still just a kid. And Cecil's kind of going, but, you know, I'm only giving him jobs that aren't dangerous. This isn't a dangerous job. Going up against Seismic. Mark is so powerful. He is invincible. He's not going to be taken out by someone like Seismic. But it's still quite tough at times.
Absolutely.
You know, the
Magnemites, you know, at one point they were certainly had the upper hand.
Yeah.
Just for a very brief moment. But you were like going, okay, is this where Dr. Seismic becomes a legit supervillain that he has to worry about? But
not this time.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah, but Mark does beat him by punching his way all the way up through the Washington Monument, knocking the top off it, and then he tells Cecil, well, I could pull it back out of the ground. It's looking pretty bad. I could pull it back out of the ground. And Cecil's like, no, we'll just get the cleanup crew to do it. You've done what we need you to do. Go back and have your graduation, basically. So really like that. But it is great to see Dr. Seismic back. It is good to see all these characters again, even the worst characters from season 1. Great to see them back in season 2. And, you know, just little appearances from them. It keeps them interesting as well, and seeing what they're doing. So good to see a moment with Dr. Seismic here. I'm going to move on to point number 2, because as Mark goes back, graduates from high school, a big moment in anyone's life, as they say. But Mark has kind of moved on. In his own mind, he's already matured. He's way beyond high school. We saw that he's going off to college with Amber next year, but there's a moment here where we have all of his friends together at Adam Eve's place. Samantha, Amber, and William and Mark are talking about their plans for the summer. I just thought it was a really funny moment when we have William, Mark's best friend, who's always trying to get Mark to take him on flights around the city, and Mark's kind of refused now. He's much more serious as a superhero.
Yeah.
And William's entire plan for the summer is to find the trashiest of reality shows and watch it twice. And that's it. That's his whole plan. Amber is going to be burying herself in local elections, I guess, for the comptroller. Yes. That's her plan for the summer. Everybody says it's so boring. Yes. Yeah. Everybody telling her it's the most boring thing to do with your summer.
Absolutely.
And a bigger part of the story really is Samantha is going to take back up her mantle as Atom Eve and go off and help in Chicago. And she does apologize to Mark, but since that's obviously quite a sore point for him, but she's going to be going off to Chicago to help people out there, use her powers, restore places for people to live. So we see that story play out here. We see her using her superpowers to fix up an apartment block and get people able to move back in there, and then set up a playground that they've been trying to get. So she does great stuff. But this is a Robert Kirkman story, so you can't have nice things in a Robert Kirkman story.
Well, that's it. It's like, it all just seems so lovely. It's kind of, let's just wipe away the red tape. You know, we've got people housed again. But I love the revelation that the reason why nothing was done to repair that was because the ground was too unstable. Exactly. And in fact, the people almost died again because of the building kind of subsiding, collapsing again. And this all plays out with her father as well as she's back home. You know, and I mean, like, you think about it, this is cool. Okay, you know, I could just create golden apples all the time and I'm a millionaire or something. But like, her dad's point is it's all too easy just to say my superpowers will be able to fix that. The problem is it needed more than just what she did.
Absolutely.
You know,
you need to be a civil engineer and an architect to build a building. You can't just click your fingers and make it look like a building, which is effectively what Adam Eve did. And if we thought that her father was bad in the first season and in the Adam Eve movie, think about what's happened to him here. His head office has been destroyed in the battle that Mark had with his dad, with Omni-Man, which has led to him losing his job. And he's now working in Bergamart, blaming people with superpowers for it, which includes his own daughter. who, in his mind, is taking the easy way out, is using her powers rather than getting training, rather than getting a job like he had to work for. So he has become even more of an a-hole in these scenes. You see his poor wife, who tries to reach out to her daughter Samantha, telling her, you know, I'd like to see you, but underneath it all, finding it very difficult to survive on the kind of wages that he's bringing home now and keeping the upkeep on their house, that kind of stuff. So Samantha knows there's something wrong here with her mom, but she can't get it out of her, and only finds out afterwards in the worst way from her father, who's telling her, until you learn, you need to develop the skills to use your powers, or develop some skills and get a real job. You can't come back home to this house.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the great Kirkman thing that he does, which is to say, you know, everything else, they just do whatever they do and everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
This is the aftermath. It's not as easy as just using your powers.
Absolutely.
Which, you know, her father has that point, really. You know, he makes that valid point. He is an a-hole, absolutely. Yep. I don't know whether I would have turned my nose up at the golden apple, however. All the groceries and everything else that she was willing to sort of just bring out of thin air. Yeah. But nonetheless, it's like, you know, I guess that's his pride. That's his
100%.
Position. So, yeah, really a strange and kind of relationship here between this family. And even though they at least do kind of talk to one another, even though it's not pleasant, but it's kind of like, it's a real tense family atmosphere here that really comes through. And I mean, ultimately she is kind of banished from the house until she kind of, in a sense, it's like him saying, until you grow up. But we'll have to see how that plays out. You know, I'm not entirely sure where this is going. It feels very different to a lot of the other stuff. I mean, absolutely. I do like with Mark and his mum, their relationship and so on. It's interesting. It'll be interesting just to see where this goes and what it's to do. But I mean, as you say, it's coming through from the Atom Eve spin-off, and, you know, it's an interesting sideline, I think, here.
Absolutely.
Because she's kind of taken herself out of all of that superhero thing, and because we see them in her treehouse, you know, she's kind of wants to be a part herself. So, I guess it's looking more at the character of Atom Eve and what she's doing.
Exactly. She wants to stick away from that idea that she has to just go out and fight supervillains and beat up people that are robbing banks, that kind of stuff. She wants to use her powers to bring joy to people. And of course, as I say, it's a Kirkman show. Can't get away with it that easily. I doubt you'd ever have the Avengers rebuilding someone's house and then it falls down on top of them and could potentially have killed them. I don't think that's the way it works. So Kirkman, of course, having his own spin on that, which I really like. Will we move on to point number 3, John?
Yes, Mark pays for his dad's mistakes.
I love how they've incorporated this into the second season. This is all paying off from the big reveal in the first season of Omni-Man killing all the members of the Guardians of the Globe that he could get his hands on. Anybody that he could kill, he does kill. Leading on from last week, we saw Red Rush's wife, Red Rush, of course, also killed by Omni-Man. We saw his wife coming in to talk to Debbie about how much her life has changed after he killed all of the Guardians of the Globe. This episode, we have 2 different people who've been massively affected by the murder of the Guardians of the Globe. First off, we have Mark going to Midnight City, being sent to Midnight City by Cecil, because there has been the reappearance of Darkwing, this world's version of Batman, and Midnight City being this world's version of Gotham. I do love some of the jokes in here about this city, the idea that it's under a spell, so the minute you arrive into it, it's always night. So a great explanation for why in DC, Gotham's world is always a dark world, filled with the Dark Knight. So here in this world, we have their version of that vigilante Darkwing here, living in the darkness at all times. But it turns out that it's actually Darkwing's former sidekick, not a sidekick, we were partners, Night Boy, who's taken on the mantle of Darkwing and trying to live up to the legacy left behind by Darkwing.
Yeah. I mean, again, Invincible dispatches him pretty quickly, you know, and but I like how that kind of almost mystical element came in here, where, you know, it certainly puts him off balance, I think, in that moment. I love the Batman references. I love, I wasn't his sidekick. I was a partner, you know, really playing into the Robin and Batman element of this. Yeah, and I kind of like how, you know, he's paying for the crimes of his father and the murders that he did there with the original Guardians. Again, like you say, it's just how this is all going to play out. Because he brings him back to Cecil. So, you know, is that for him to kind of try and enroll him into the new Guardians? Is that just to lock him up? You know, what kind of, you know, the menace that he's been doing, if he was, you know, the partner, the sidekick of Darkwing, you know, why has he suddenly gone rogue? Or was it just to take someone who had a vendetta against Mark off the board? Because that would ultimately, affect any missions that he would have to go on to Cecil. So it's kind of an interesting one. I wasn't entirely sure why it was happening. But it'd be interesting to see why this is, or whether it was just the setup ultimately for the bigger Atlantean one, where Mark managed to still keep hold of his aquatic cherry.
Well, I suppose one of the things about it is that Cecil is saying this person is pretending to be Darkwing. We know Darkwing's dead. Can you go and check and make sure he hasn't come back from the dead or something? You know, that's part of it. But more interestingly, in the battle itself, it's the threat from Darkwing to, as he's called in the comic books, to Mark, where he's saying to him, you did all this, you're your father's son. And Mark tries to protest against it, saying, I'm nothing like him. I'm a human. I'm half human at least. I'm a hero, not like my father. And then when Mark is sent to the shadow world by Darkwing, to this other dimension almost that is there in Midnight City.
Yes, he is threatening. Yeah,
he pushes back against Darkwing, to saying to him, I am my father's son and I will kill you just like my father. Do you doubt that I will do that? So Mark uses the impression, I suppose, that Darkwing 2 has of Omni-Man in order to get out of the situation. So he is using that connection and how scared someone could be of someone that murdered their mentor.
But I love this conflict within Mark that, you know, he is worried about it, but will there come a point where he accepts it? You know, we haven't seen Omni-Man return back to Earth yet, but what will happen when he does? Because, you know, at the end of season 1, with him saying, you know, you're my father, with his face caved in by his father, then it's like, you know, he obviously loves him. So this inner turmoil, this conflict about, you know, whether he's going to turn evil. And I mean, it's that classic superhero tale, but it, you know, it's his inner turmoil. It's Cecil's turmoil and doubts about whether he should be even bringing him back into the fold. It's the doubts, the perceptions from Darkwing 2, as well as the Queen of Atlantis. You know, it's all down to the reputation of his father that he's having to deal with, to live with, and in a sense fight against. Whether that will be successful is something to be found.
Yeah, and it is interesting that Cecil did say that to Debbie, as we mentioned earlier on, that he's not going to send Mark on any very, very dangerous missions. Yet here, when he goes to Midnight City, he gets sent into the shadow world. That could be very dangerous for Mark. And then the second mission that he's sent on is going down to the Queen of Atlantis. And I love this from Cecil, where he's kind of going, well, sorry, but the tradition is that since Omni-Man killed her husband, you have to get in and marry her. But it's just ceremonial. It doesn't really matter at all. Just go ahead down.
Yeah, it's like, I've got a girlfriend.
Yeah, and Mark's kind of like going, do I have to? But he gets down there and learns that there's been a lot of development there. The joke here is that Aquarius, who was the member of the Guardians of the Globe, who went up there, just was messing about, pouncing around in his superhero costume while she actually ran all of Atlantis and changed all of those stupid laws that meant that she would have to have her husband replaced if he died.
Yeah,
so
I love
so
that.
She's been the real leader for the last decade.
Yeah,
so,
I love that. I loved how it was like, you know, it's, boys with toys. He just went off and played around. I was running this whole civilization.
Exactly.
Yeah, really like that. I love the battle as well, ultimately, with the change in the tradition where it's almost like the creature from the deep has that kind of angular fish element to it, where this little thing pops up out of the depths, and it's like Mark's kind of hugging it, and it's just really something on the forehead of the creature from the deep.
I love that it's making noises like a squeaky toy, and Mark's going, have I done it? Have I won? Do I win? Do I get out of here? And then you see the monster is like, oh, that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost like he's knobbling his head, you know, sort of in a neck lock, you know? Yeah. And, I love this. I love then the fight, because I mean, this monster seemed genuinely powerful, and, ultimately it's kind of like Cecil saying, get out of there. But again, it's to the point with, around whether he is Omni-Man. Yes, Omni-Man with his cover would have saved the Atlanteans as well. So possibly Mark doing it, does that show that he's better than his father? It's whether he's covering something up, you know. I'm almost wondering, because I don't really know these comics very well, but is it almost like a trigger? If he is Viltrumized, is it some kind of genetic thing that will trigger on, you know, or something like that, where that will make him become the authoritarian aggressor that they are across the galaxy. Yeah, so
it is interesting. I do wonder if Omni-Man would have gone back and helped the Atlanteans if he'd been in this situation. He probably wouldn't have been, because he knows his powers better, and he's stronger than Mark, as we saw in that big battle at the end of season 1. So if he'd been sent on this mission by Cecil, he may have just taken the guide from Cecil to get out of there and just gone and allowed them to take care of themselves, because he wouldn't have been thought of badly by Cecil. He got out of there, took the order and left, whereas Mark here can't possibly leave. What we see is the creature from the deep goes after and starts eating and killing all of the Atlanteans. They don't have any control over him at all, so Mark has to go back and save them. So
so I mean, I like this. It's all playing into that kind of feel of, you know, Mark having to deal with the sins of his father, effectively.
Absolutely. But that's kind of the big central part of Mark's story in this episode. So there's a couple of other twists and turns in the episode that I really want to talk about.
Yes, point 4. Yeah. The Shapesmith.
You know, I found this story so much fun. Yeah. Russ Livingston, the astronaut who was up on the planet with Mark, went to save Mars, save all the NASA astronauts that were up there from the alien race that was infecting the Martians up there, and they were shape-shifting. We saw a little nod at the end of that episode that Russ had potentially been taken over by one of these shape-shifting aliens, and now we see them back at a debrief, the 4 astronauts back at the debrief, telling NASA effectively about these shape-changing aliens. If they get back to Earth, we are screwed. We need to sort this out. Why don't you send Mark back up there? Why don't you send Invincible back up there to kill them all, destroy that race? Because if they come to Earth, we're screwed. And Russ in the corner kind of going, still pretending to be human, hoping not to be found out about it, and then saying he needs to go to the ejection room to urinate, something along those lines. So he's not even able to speak like a normal human. He's still learning everything about the body, everything about what's going on. But
it's the same with his landlady as well. He's not paid the rent because he doesn't know that he should be doing that.
Exactly.
And she goes, you need to give it me by the end of the week or you're out. And he's kind of like, just doesn't compute with him at all. Yeah. I like this, dare I say it, fish out of water, a Martian out of Mars. You know, I kind of really enjoyed that. And I love just the little hint, you know, that glimmer of connection that he feels he could belong here, where he sees this anniversary TV special of Martian Man. And so
another one of the Guardians of the Globe murdered by Omni-Man.
And so, you know, he totters down to join the new Guardians of the Globe, as Shapesmith.
Yeah.
So I like that.
And the fact that he takes the shape of Rexplode when he gets there, you know, Rex going, not this again. I can't handle another person taking on a shape of one of us again. Really good fun. Also, what's great fun here is the Lizard League. This absolutely useless version of, I guess, Hydra.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. This is Hydra.
Yeah, it is.
The voice acting for the new leader of the Lizard League, who ultimately gets shot at the end.
He does.
By the
bullet
king.
through the head.
Yeah. Was so good. You know, I loved it. It did feel just like a complete... I just loved this rip on Hydra. It was so good.
Absolutely. The whole bit of we aren't a joke, no matter what it says on social media.
Exactly.
Before he takes the bullet to his head. After failing in their mission, they got beaten by the Guardians of the Globe.
It was also the slightly high, slightly lispy
it
sort
was.
of voice that he did as well, which I really, really liked. As I say, I just loved this moment. It was so much fun.
Really, really good fun. The other thing I really liked about this moment as well with Russ is him explaining his origin story to the Guardians of the Globe, where he's got this very basic origin story that can just be glossed over really quickly and goes, is that okay? Can I join now? Am I able to join it? Can I come and stay and live here? Can I be part of your team now? That's it. He obviously read it off the back of a cereal box, was kind of the level of detail he went into.
Really good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I wonder, is he going to become a member of the Guardian of the Globe, or will they find him out pretty quickly or not? I don't know.
I hope so.
I think it's a lot of fun that we're getting this interesting character who doesn't even know how to be human. And has only just arrived as a new member of this group.
Absolutely.
And then our final twist of the episode. Once again, post-credit scenes in every episode of this season of Invincible. You'll see them in the other 2 episodes that are coming out in the next couple of weeks as well.
Absolutely.
So make sure you don't turn off before the credits go.
0.5 angstrom.
Yes, angstrom levy. So I now understand something that Chris was trying to tell me last week.
Okay.
So in the comic books, there is one Angstrom Levi who can travel between dimensions. Okay? That's what he tried to tell me last week. What I understand now is by the end of last episode, there is only one Angstrom Levi. He's pulled everybody from all the other versions of himself and now contains all of their knowledge, and there is only one Angstrom Levi. So I think that's what Chris was trying to say last week, and I just didn't get it out of him. I didn't probably interrogate the information enough for me to get that out of it. But it makes sense. He is the one that now has all the knowledge of all the information from all the other Angstrom Levis from all the other dimensions. And in this episode, in this post-credit scene, he's in another dimension with a Mark who
has been captured,
and more importantly, who did join with Omni-Man, and Omni-Man is dead.
Yes.
So Angstrom Levi has now found a dimension where they did beat Omni-Man and has found what they did. He's gotten the plan from that dimension as to how they took out Omni-Man.
Yeah, I love the fact that we see a female Cecil and Donald as well here.
They really do look like exactly the same, except a wig on them. But
yeah, it was really good. But yes, I guess this is his vengeance against Mark. And it is kind of the interesting thing, I think, with Angstrom Levy, because his goal was to sort of cure the world. He said, I'm not a bad guy. I have, almost pure intentions here. But the accident at the end of episode 1 here of season 2 just has corrupted the life out of him. In the sense that he's looking for pure revenge. It's not against Omni-Man, though. This is against Mark. It's against both of them, but it's because of that accident. He is committed to destroying Invincible for what he did.
Yes.
Not only in terms of the disfiguration, which he seems to have kind of like put over a massive hoodie to cover it up, but also because of what that plan entailed, which was to find all the technologies for curing cancer, climate change, all this kind of stuff, the best of the different dimensions in order to advance and create galactic peace in a sense.
Yeah, and also bring it back to the Prime Dimension, fix everything in the Prime Dimension, and then start spreading it back out, that philanthropic goal that he had to spread it all out across all the other dimensions after he got it to the Prime Dimension, which he can't do now. And that merging of all the brains, all the minds of all the other Angstrom Levi's has left him with the knowledge of what Omni-Man did, killing thousands and thousands of people related to and friends of Angstrom Levi and all the other dimensions. So
he's been corrupted by all that knowledge, but as well, there is, to my mind, it's not entirely, but it's also a singular focus on Mark,
Yeah,
because you
I
see
get
it
that.
where he comes into the chamber where Mark has been captured and it's the glee that he can't hurt anyone anymore. You know, yes, he also wants to go after Omni-Man because he knows what he's done, but he also wants to go after his son, even though, at least in the dimension where the accident happened, his son didn't join him. You know, it's almost like you're going after the wrong mark in the wrong dimension.
Because there is just that one line right at the end as he leaves where he turns to Cecil and says to him, punish him for everything his father did. You have him in your grasp right now. Now you can take it out on him. So he's telling him to take their revenge out on that dimension's version of Mark, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff, but another interesting build-up of this character of Angstrom Levi as he starts to become, I guess, at least this season's bigger bad at the moment as it starts out. It could be all resolved by episode 4, but right now it does seem to be building up to a big showdown as he learns all this information that he could take out Mark with.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Any notes about the episode? Anything else you want to talk about the episode, John?
Yeah, it's just one of the things I noticed from your podcast last week. You didn't mention about the return of Donald. So
we didn't.
Do see Donald effectively blowing himself up after having Omni-Man's hand around his spinal cord. So definitely dead, yet we do see him again at the side of Cecil.
Yes.
And we see again here, Donald, doing his thing, with Cecil. So.
Yes. How did I not notice it last week? Because it was on previously on at the beginning where we had Donald killing himself, with Omni-Man in the house. And then we saw him in the episode, but this episode, much more focus on it. We see Debbie, seeing him alive there. Debbie was across the other side of the road. She knows he died in that explosion, questions it. And Donald seems to not understand
he doesn't.
that he's dead and back again.
Yeah. So.
And Cecil's kind of like, shh, don't tell him.
Yeah, no,
or something
exactly.
like that.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's, why is Donald
cloning
coming
technology, I would say.
Yeah. Why is Donald coming back?
Hence the dodgy wig on the one in the other dimension.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah, why is Donald back and why is he able to come back? And why does he not know that he died last
Maybe
season?
Donald is the key to the destruction of Omni-Man. He just keeps on coming.
Maybe that's it.
Coming back.
The way to beat Omni-Man is to never die, I guess, or to die and come back, I guess. That might be it. But I just, it's one of those things, as we said at the beginning of this podcast, so much goes on in these episodes that we're going to miss bits and pieces of it. But yeah, I'm surprised we forgot to mention that Donald had come back from the dead last week. But really important here. I did notice this week Robert Kirkman had commented on a fan's post about this on Twitter. They put up a picture going, hang on a second, did I just see Donald in episode 1? And Kirkman just responded with, oops, as if it was a mistake of the animators putting him back in the first episode, but not a mistake. This is part of his character here, it seems. So we'll probably learn something about Donald in the future of the show, I guess, right?
Yeah, good stuff.
Excellent. Just one note I completely forgot to mention when I was recording with John, that we really should have mentioned. Aquaria, the Queen of Atlantis, is played by Tatiana Maslany, who we covered right here on our podcast all about She-Hulk when she plays the main character, Jennifer Walters there over on She-Hulk. So really cool to hear her here in the episode. I noticed it while we were watching the episode, but completely forgot to mention it in our notes for this episode. But great to have her back. Absolutely love Tatiana Maslany. That's it, I think, for our discussion about Invincible Season 2, Episode 2. Thanks, John, for joining us for this one.
No problem
very
at
good
all.
of you to jump in.
So, Derek, what are your overall thoughts for this second episode? In about 6 hours, I lose my virginity to a fish. I don't, by the way, fellow Guardians. No. I'm just recounting the title of the episode.
Absolutely. No, I really like this. There was some great stuff in this episode. I really like how they've continued to draw out storylines for Mark from what happened with Omni-Man right back to episode 1 when he killed Guardians of the Globe, the impact that it's having on Mark in his life right now. Everything seems to be connected to it still, right? Everything that's going on in Mark's life is still surrounding those actions of Omni-Man in season 1. And of course it would be. It makes a lot of sense, but it's really well written, really interestingly brought to life on screen, and some great comedy moments that we have in here. Yeah. You know, even the idea obviously from the title of the episode, that Mark thinks he could possibly have to go and marry a fish-like woman underneath the earth in the sea. That's possibly the pay that he has to make for his father's choices. I thought that was really funny, a really interesting choice for how the series is written. So another great episode. Some really interesting build dates there with Dr. Angstrom, with this shape-shifting Martian and him joining the Guardians of the Globe. And of course the Legend League was also great fun. But again, with this show having the storyline of what's going on with Samantha and her parents, that's something that you wouldn't see in other shows. Last week we talked about Debbie and her experience of mourning and loss and anger, and how that was treated on the show. Really interesting and very different for even an adult animated show. Here, these conversations that are going on between Samantha and her parents, very different and very interesting for this type of animated show. So yeah, great episode. Looking forward to next week. How about yourself, John? What did you think overall of this episode?
Yeah, I really like this episode. Again, just developing on from the first episode, I'd give this 4 fish fingered out of 5. I mean, fish fingers out of 5.
I almost choked on my water there, John.
Excellent. Like, I really enjoyed sort of that central thrust, and I of Mark dealing with Omni-Man. I'm really still enjoying that. I just loved all the additional fun bits around it, from Dr. Seismic returning. I think Russ Livingston and his awkwardness in with the Martian inside, having to deal with this new surrounding that is called Earth and all their customs. The Lizard League was just hilarious. I just couldn't stop laughing about that. I just thought the voice acting made that little scene.
It was very cool.
It was so good. Everything is just fantastically done here. I'm really, really enjoying it. And I think, with Angstrom Levy, I just get the sense of a really, really good nemesis here for Mark.
Yep.
And I just can't wait to see how that plays.
Yeah.
So, 4 fish fingers out of 5.
Excellent. Yeah, I think with all the knowledge that he's getting from all the different dimensions and pulling it all together in a grand plan to take out Mark, it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out as the season goes on. Excellent stuff. We have some feedback in on our first episode of Invincible Season 2, John. First up, we got an email in from Coffee and Vodka who says, "Greetings, fellow mind-melded defenders. A good start for a long overdue Season 2. It was nice to see that he remains anything but invincible, especially going up against the Mauler Bros. Which one would have thought we're easily beaten? The other dimensional father and son team up made for a great fake out at the beginning of the episode. All the characters, especially Debbie, seem to be fully formed rather than just there to motivate Mark. My one hope is that Kirkman stops seeing this fantastic show as a side project to his many Walking Dead projects and steps up production. In the meantime, looking forward to the rest of the eps as well as your coverage of them. 4.5, two-faced maulers, boorish bullies, and pissed off pacifists out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka."
Excellent stuff.
Great ratings there, Coffee and Vodka.
Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. The fake out from episode 1 was really good, because I was, you go into it and you're just going, oh, okay, that's different from what I thought was going to happen. So that was really good. And just then linking that into Angstrom Levy is also really good, because I liked how that continued over just as that little snippet at the end of this episode. That was just really good as well.
Absolutely. I've got some great news for you, Coffee and Vodka, in regards to Mr. Kirkman. He's no longer involved in the TV shows. Absolutely, he gets royalties and he has the executive producer credit on The Walking Dead, but he's not involved in that universe, hasn't been for quite a long time. Actually, because of a court case that he took against AMC after about season 3 of the show. So he was involved over there. Of course, they're based on his comic books. He does get royalties, but he is entirely focused on his comic book projects and Invincible. And even better news, the show has been confirmed for a 3rd season, which means the animation studio are already working on the 3rd season at the moment. So even though we're getting 4 episodes this year, 4 episodes next year, hopefully early next year, for this season 2, season 3 is already in the works. So don't worry, lots of Invincible left to come, thankfully. and in much more rapid succession as well, which is great.
Yeah. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Over on Facebook, John Bucket says, welcome back, Invincible. I did not expect Mark to fall in with Cecil so quickly.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice, wasn't it? I think it's kind of him trying to prove himself that he can work for Cecil. And part of it is if he goes and works for the person who was his father's former employer and does the heroic thing, that means to Mark that he's not like his father.
Exactly.
I think that's part of it for
and
Mark.
I think, the reverse of that is true, is that Mark may expect or think he's fallen back in with Cecil. I think Cecil has very different ideas that he has. This is still a test bed very much for Cecil. Possibly any sniff of something slightly Omni, then, Cecil could be a very different proposition.
That's true.
Than Mark thinks.
That's true.
Good stuff. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. We also got some feedback in from Dr. Bob Phillips, who says, I did not see that coming. Roughly sums up my view of this episode, but with admiration, not regret. Biggest highlights were the alternate style and gender expression of the Maulers in the multidimensional mauling massacre and the in-credit styling of a Survivor Ahsoka style. But I also loved the sobering effect of child injury on a drunk parent and still can't cope with C-cell as the mispronunciation of Cecil. Very good, Dr.
Absolutely.
Finally,
seashells on the seashore, Cecil.
There you go. Yeah, two completely different pronunciations of Cecil and Cecil. Thanks, Dr. Bob. Finally, Dr. Bob says, I have a question. Angstrom Levi, is that a reference to the measurement of astronomical size and Schitt's Creek as well?
It could possibly be.
I think angstrom is.
Yeah, angstrom.
But Invincible is quite an old comic at this stage, been around for a long, long time, so probably not a reference to Eugene and Dan Levy.
No, probably not.
Probably not. But you never know. It could be. They could have picked up Eugene Levy. He's been around for a very long time. Maybe that's it. Thanks so much, Dr. Bob, for your feedback.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Bob, for the feedback. And thank you, fellow Guardians, for all those thoughts. Really good stuff.
Absolutely. And thanks once again for joining me, John. Hopefully we'll have Chris back for our discussion next week on Season 2, Episode 3, This Missive, This Machination.
Oh, I wanted to say that so that then I wasn't here and it'd be really confusing.
We can always have you back on for the third episode.
No, just the 4th, I think.
Okay, we'll see.
Or maybe the 8th
we'll
in
see
2024.
How it works out. We'll see how it works out, John, but we are covering loads of other stuff. We've still got the season finale of Loki Season 2 coming up, which also came out today on Disney+. And this weekend, we're going back to the cinema to watch The Marvels, the 34th movie in the MCU.
I think so, yeah.
I'm very excited about it. The reviews have been really good, and some of my favourite characters in there. Really excited to see Miss Marvel back on screen, Nick Fury back on screen, Captain Marvel. Yeah.
And Monica Rambeau. Yes.
Yeah, really excited to see them all on screen together.
Intended.
Yeah, very cool. Good stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back with you next time.
Yes, thanks so much, fellow Guardians, for joining us. Great to be on this episode of Invincible. In the meantime, and until Chris returneth to the podcast, keep watching, keep listening, and of course, keep being invincible.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.